Baby Driver is a crappy movie and one of the most overrated films of 2017. I know, not everyone thinks that. In fact, most people believe it to be one of the best films of that year. And trying to make the case for why a movie sucks when said movie has been praised by people like Adam from Your Movie Sucks, Red Letter Media, and a lot of other critics. It's like trying to prove why Sword Art Online tells a better story than The Godfather. It just doesn't happen. Until today. Before Baby Driver, every other Edgar Wright film I had seen, I thought it was either fantastic or pretty damn good. Discounting some things that weren't really my taste, I never thought I was going to encounter one bad apple, or at least one has probably thought of and weakly executed as Baby Driver. A movie whose story and characters have as much depth as the Academy Awards, and action scenes so awkwardly and generically constructed that I really don't understand what was so special about this film. I don't think there's a single element or aspect that is well handled. Things are either broken, empty, or just mediocre. I cannot comprehend why this thing has a Metacritic score of 86. Then again, Black Panther exists, so what do I know? Anyway, let's start from the beginning. The music.
One of the coolest things about the movie is get started right away with setting it up that music kind of drives the entire plot. And I really loved how everything was timed so perfectly when you're just right in the beginning, when you're getting ready, when you're grabbing coffee. The first time you see her, everything is set to this like awesome beat.
Music drives the romance and the entire movie. The chase sequences and fight scenes are all choreographed to the rhythm of the beat by director Edgar Wright.
And it's not like I necessarily thought like, oh, this is a movie. I literally couldn't listen to the song without thinking of a car chase. So it's like kind of my version of action movie synesthesia is like, oh, this song is a car chase. And then eventually I had to come up with the movie that went with that song, which has been...
And how music will, in many ways, drive this particular story.
Because, as you know, the music's such an integral part of the storytelling. We didn't talk about movies at all. We just talked music. And I didn't really know why, but it was cool to talk about music with him. And then he said, I have a script that I think you're going to like because it has a lot to do with music.
This entire film was built around a specific set of songs. The music is the core element that unites every other aspect. So it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that we have a crappy story with shitty characters. But what is surprising is the music itself. I would say it's alright. Typically, I don't like to focus my reviews on the soundtrack or the score of what I'm reviewing, because I don't feel like I'm the best person to do it. I never studied music, and I have no idea what goes into it, what constitutes a great song, or what makes something awful. But I do know when something doesn't feel right. And despite this film being built around one of Edgar Wright's favorite playlists, and you can see that the editing is very much on point with the songs, sometimes it feels like I'm watching random crap with something in the background that doesn't quite fit with the crap I'm watching, like this scene in the beginning. I can't say I think the song they use is a bad song, it just doesn't feel like the right match for this scene. I feel so out of tone by the music choices that every time I watch this moment, my brain reverts to those times when I was in a car, there was a red light, and one random asshole next to me playing loud music that wasn't particularly interesting and was rather obnoxious. That's how I feel about this one and most of the other music choices. The only time in which the music felt appropriate is in this scene. Maybe a little bit overdramatic, but at least it fits with the tone of what we're seeing and with what Baby is feeling at this moment. All other songs feel off. And because of that, there's this constant impression that the film isn't that well made from the get-go. The soundtrack should enhance and complement whatever the visuals are, not distract the viewer to the point where it just becomes loud noises, or make the audience uncomfortable by choosing something that doesn't fit with the scene. Again, this is all very subjective. It's entirely possible that all the songs or most of them worked for you. But given that this film doesn't have that high of a score on IMDb, I'm guessing the number of people who have seen Baby Driver and think it's amazing is not that high. There's another film I'm going to mention later on in the video. I'm going to use Drive to compare a lot of different things, but one of them is the way each film uses its music to create an atmosphere. Whereas in one, the ambience is addictive and outstanding, in the other, it's cringeworthy, but more on that later. The film begins with a shot of the bank our main character is about to rob. And right here, you can already feel the awkwardness of how this thing was put together. This arm movement looks very unnatural, not something someone would actually do, unless they're trying to get a cool shot for their Instagram account. I don't know, it just feels and looks staged, and what follows is even worse. You know, that random moment when everyone in the car looks at each other like the other person is a camera lens. A very natural occurrence. If the movie was self-aware and broke the fourth wall, then this wouldn't have come out looking so awkward. But this is the only time when something like this happens. There are other instances where the characters are positioned in a similar manner, but this is the only moment the characters look directly at the camera intentionally. And it looks dumb. Not the best way to open the film. Look, I don't mind the fact that someone thought it was a good idea to have them exit the car and pick up their supplies from the trunk, all choreographed. What I do mind is the way they're dressed and walking towards the bank. It's like, couldn't they have chosen some clothes that would actually blend in and walk normally towards their target?
People don't walk like that.
It just makes them look ridiculous. It's a miracle there was no one there to look at how stupid they are. And by miracle I mean the director was sane enough to realize that if there were any witnesses, then the heist wouldn't have worked. Note that they get inside the bank at exactly 1 minute and 37 seconds. It's important. Whatever I'm supposed to feel while watching this, I don't feel it. If you don't like or connect with this particular song, then there's nothing here for you. It's just some kid acting kinda funny. You might as well have been Gangnam Style. That way you would have at least gone cringeworthy all the way, instead of just looking slightly awkward and boring. But this moment is nice. That was a nice cut. Remember when they first entered the bank? Almost a minute has passed since then. It took them a full minute to tell the people inside the bank that this was a robbery. How exactly did that work out? It's not like the three of them were dressed in normal, casual outfits. Everything about their look screams, we're about to rob this bank. You're gonna tell me nobody, not even the security guard, looked at them and thought, there's something fishy about those three over there. I wonder why they're wearing masks and dressed like idiots. I guess it's nothing. 1 minute later, fuck, I'm definitely getting fired this time. Then we have this very strange moment where Baby, our protagonist, stops dancing and looks at the bank. The film focuses on Baby paying attention to his partner's weapons. Not sure if this is the movie's way of implying that Baby doesn't like guns or the idea of hurting people, but as soon as the music is back on point, he continues his lip syncing. He could be just nervous, but when I first saw this, my immediate reaction was that he was just waiting for the music to be good again and didn't really care for the people inside. But he was probably just nervous. Still, not the best way to make this character look nice. Afterwards, we start the first car chase sequence. Oh boy, let's talk about it. So far so good, really cool. And this is where it begins. From this moment until here, we have 28 cuts, and most of them are less than a second long. I find it extremely difficult to follow the characters or pay attention to the plot. You can't tell the spatial geography of where the good guys and the bad guys are. I know they're running away from the cops, and by the look of it, it implies Baby managed to ditch several police vehicles. But actually looking at it, it just makes my head hurt. Everything is so rushed and poorly cut, it's very difficult to pay attention to what's happening. And if you try to, it's just a consecutive series of quick cuts that butchered whatever it was they had before sending this footage to the editing room. So like in the span of 19 seconds, they wanted to insert as much information as possible, without caring to make that information digestible. We actually see the chase from everyone's perspective. The problem is that they also want to show the car from the outside and include the brand name Edgar Wright shots of closing in and out of things. It makes the entire experience a clusterfuck. And if you really want to see how bad that first part was, just look at the rest of the chase. It got so much better. From this point on, until the moment Baby passes in front of that RV, it's so much easier to understand what's actually happening. Sure, there are still a lot of cuts, 19 to be precise, but they're completely different from the ones before. The frames are wider, so you can actually see who's in the shot. Most of the cuts are longer. Not to mention that most of the longer cuts are from the outside, so we can get a good look at the geography and see where everyone is. There's only one Edgar Wright closing in shot, and very few quick less than a second cuts. It got better, but then they missed an opportunity. Why? Just why? This was one of the best shots of the trailer, one of the things that made me excited to see this film. But actually seeing it, it's depressing. Why couldn't they have waited until the car finished positioning itself? I wanted to see it completely turn around and only cut once they left that area. It would have made this moment so much better. Similar to this shot, where they don't cut once you realize where the car is going. They're actually showing it moving forwards and it looks great. The car turns and then speeds forward. Awesome! And as a bonus, we hear the police siren and see another cop car, signifying that the chase isn't over yet. I wish they had done that with that trailer shot. The rest of the chase is watchable, a little cartoonish at times, but not headache-inducing. The scene is awesome, but it would have looked cooler if the police car had flipped over and the guys in the back had their mouths open, completely amazed at how good a driver Baby is. And I'm aware they show the guys in the back, but again, it's for less than a second and impossible to make out what their faces are. You just hear a brief noise. Oh well, I guess no one is concerned about their fingerprints or other physical evidence they may have left in that car. Who cares about that stuff anyway? That was the first car chase sequence this film had to offer. More than that, it was the first 6 minutes of Baby Driver, the teaser that was supposed to hook and leave the audience excited to watch the rest of the plot unfold. The only impression I got was that this movie wasn't going to be very entertaining, and not particularly well made. I mentioned Drive earlier on in this video, so let's briefly talk about that. I'm not even going to compare this with Mad Max Fury Road, it's just not fair, for both Baby Driver and Fury Road. It's like comparing the United States Army with the Legions of Rome. Sure, Romans are cool, but it's obvious they'll get slaughtered by the US Army, so I'm keeping the comparisons to a minimum. Now this is a film. Hear that music. It's not just cool and pleasant, it complements the tone and the visuals. And the editing isn't all over the place. Every time it cuts, you understand that it went from point A to point B. You get to look at the scene without feeling like your head's going to explode. And you can follow along and marvel at how simple it actually is. Just a smart guy getting away from the cops. In the first 10 minutes of Drive, we know that this is someone who actually enjoys driving and that the music is awesome. It doesn't feel out of place or awkward. It fits perfectly with his stylized masterpiece. How do we know that he likes driving? Because that's exactly what he does as soon as he gets home. He walks out and goes back to driving because that's what he likes to do. This is how you show that a character who likes to drive, by showing them driving when they don't have to. The biggest compliment I can give the car chase sequences in Drive is that they are watchable, easy to follow, and just entertaining. It doesn't take an Einstein to make an action sequence engaging. You just have to show the main character, the car, the other car or cars, and that's it. But do it in a way that isn't filled with useless ad cuts that may have looked cool when you visualize them in your head, but don't look cool in the movie. And it's a bonus if the way the main character manages to escape whoever they're running from tells us something about them. In this case, we learn right from the start that the driver is smarter than your average getaway driver. He blends in, only resorting to speeding up when it's absolutely necessary. Now, Baby Driver does this to an extent, mainly that armored truck heist, and I'll get to that later when the editing is actually good, and you see where everyone and everything is located, and you actually get a glimpse of Baby as a character. He prevents Electro from killing that guy. The problem is that that sequence takes place 25 minutes into the film, and they have already lost me by that point. The movie needs to grab me within those first 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes in order to make me care. Drive does this, Baby Driver does not. In fact, it does the opposite, whereas in one, I'm invested in the story no matter how minimalistic it is, because it's actually interesting, or in Drive's case, it's told in an interesting manner, by characters that feel authentic. And the other, I'm following along a dumb narrative filled with cartoonish, over-the-top, impossible to care about characters, plot devices and plot contrivances, and a soundtrack that, for me personally, feels very much out of place. Baby Driver comes off like a film from someone who saw Drive, didn't like it, and thought they could do better. And the result is simply pathetic. Not a lot happens in Drive, it's a very uneventful movie. The trick is that what happens in such a way that it compensates for the lack of action. It's so serene that's almost like a drug. That's why I call it addictive. And Baby Driver simply doesn't have the same quality of technique or skill or story or characters to stand at the same level. Even just the car chase sequences are weak in comparison. And I can go to other films where the driving isn't the main attraction to get better sequences. Terminator 2 Judgment Day. It started on foot and swiftly transitions into vehicles. It's one of the most enjoyable, well-shot and well-edited sequences I have ever seen. Filled with wide, long takes that let you know the scope of the chase, super easy to understand where the characters are, and the only real issue is that sometimes you get to spot when they replace Arnold with a double, but I don't think that detracts from the experience. It enhances it really. If you're interested in filmmaking, you get an idea of how sequences as dangerous as this one are constructed. It's pretty impressive. This is an all-around fantastic chase, and I like that the music, it's something so inherently Terminator. It doesn't make you think the director just picked his favorite songs from the 60s or something. It's actually meant to go along with the film. Another one I can jump into is Bourne Identity. Doesn't have a lot in common with Baby Driver, but there is an awesome sequence. We have a chaotic, hectic chase through an urban scenery, and yet you can easily follow along the characters and enjoy the ride. Some of the cuts are even on point with the music. like Terminator deserving a video on its own. But I'm not a new Baby Driver, so let's get back to it. After that less than ideal opening, we have another stylized sequence. This time, Baby is getting coffee. And no matter how many YouTube videos exist about all the Easter eggs, all I can say about this scene is that it's boring. Not pretentious, sometimes when we have a continuous shot without cuts in a shady movie, it can feel pretentious, like with that last James Bond film, where it was unnecessary and didn't add much to the experience. Here, it actually goes well with how the rest of the film is made. The problem is that I don't get that much enjoyment from watching Ansel Elgort walking and dancing through the streets. I'm guessing this was riveting for the critics that gave this film a perfect 10 out of 10, but for me this is... okay, whatever. The only piece of useful information for the audience is that Baby likes music, likes dancing, and most likely has a crush on this girl. That's it. And a few seconds later we get this scene. We have Shane from The Walking Dead interacting with Baby in a very aggressive and rude manner. He's a fucking asshole towards him, and everything about this scene makes me wonder if they actually spoke to each other before robbing the bank. And then further on we have another sequence with new characters that speak to each other before robbing anything. I don't quite understand the purpose or how this scene works. If Shane had so many issues with Baby, then why didn't he brought them up when they were first preparing the heist? I'm assuming that they actually prepared the heist beforehand, but this entire scene plays out like this is the first time Shane is meeting Baby. And worst of all, it comes off really cliché and artificial, with Shane throwing random lines of dialogue that don't mean anything.
Leave the kid alone.
You can't just be in crime, right?
You can't just be in crime? What is that supposed to mean? Of course you can be in crime. It's fairly easy to break the law. I don't get where he's going with this.
What's it matter to you?
Just think that he thinks he's better than us.
For fuck's sakes, what does this add to the film except make Shane look like a retard and coming off like a piss poor attempt of making the audience care for Baby? The only variable in this scenario that provokes any kind of reaction is the way Shane is acting. Like an idiot. This whole scene is a plot contrivance to make me care for Baby, and it fails because it makes no goddamn sense.
You're gonna get blood on your hands, and you're gonna find out that shit don't wash off in the fucking sink.
What the fuck was that? Why was he so emotional? Is there some sort of backstory that explains why Shane is like this? Maybe his girlfriend or boyfriend were murdered by some fools like Baby? That's a possibility. Otherwise, the way this scene is portrayed is very laughing-inducing. We already knew Shane had a few loose screws in his head, but this is going beyond that. It's almost hilarious.
You're either hard as nails or scared as shit. Which one is it?
Scratch that, it is hilarious. So over the top that actually managed to be entertaining.
Which one is it?
Afterwards, we have a lovely elevator scene, and look! They even managed to get my face right. Not kidding, this is pretty much my facial expression for the majority of this film. I don't like it very much.
Finest whining and dining of all the wines and dines in town.
Well, she's gonna be annoying.
Baby, you did good, kid. Do me a favor, next time Doc calls, don't pick up.
He seems like a nice guy. I wonder how the film will handle his character. After Baby and Doc get out of the elevator, we learn that Doc is the one who takes most of Baby's money, because of some debt Baby owes him. But before that, there was this weird moment where the audio changed slightly. This will sound nitpicky, but I swear that the audio coming from Doc's mouth sounds like it was recorded differently from the previous scenes. Like Kevin Spacey had to re-record this line right in front of a microphone. This isn't a flaw, just something I noticed and feel worth mentioning.
Now I get absolutely no pleasure in taking candy from Baby.
Fast approaching the day. On you.
Now getting back to the story, from this scene we learn that Baby is left with only a small amount of the money he was supposed to get. Something happened in the past, and it seems that Baby is only committing heists to pay off the debt he owes Doc. This is important because it speaks out about these two characters, their motivations and the relationship they have with each other. Not a very good one, it seems. And this is important to illustrate how ridiculous the third act is.
Clad in black business clothing, coats, bandanas, and sunglasses.
I love how the movie itself mentions how unusual the characters were dressed. This reporter should have been there. Maybe then the bank wouldn't have been robbed. He could have alerted the security guards and they could have done something. This guy would have been a hero. The only thing missing from that news report is that it took them almost 1 minute from the time they got inside the bank to actually robbing it. But I guess that minute is irrelevant. We saw Baby dancing to cool music, that's what's important. They have his picture, and once they find the right car, they'll have his fingerprints. Unless the police is somehow super incompetent in this film. What happens next is actually kinda nice. We see Baby spending time with his foster father, and although this doesn't make me like or care for him, it's a nice moment. Except for the part of,
"You don't belong in that world. I have to do what I have to do, just one more job."
These cliché and generic statements tend to stand out more when the film they're in doesn't have anything original to say, or anything at all. A few seconds later, we are introduced to Baby's hobby. He likes to record people and then transform what they said into music. Melodies, if you will. This is one of the few moments throughout the plot where we actually learn something about our protagonist as a person. We already knew he liked music, but this makes a stronger point. The boy loves music, and I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is this pathetic, ridiculous flashback that shows us Baby's background. For a moment, we went from a $30 million Hollywood movie to a cheap made-for-TV film. As a character, Baby already had nothing to make an audience root for him. Unless you think the actor playing him is attractive, then you care because of how he looks and not who he is. Nothing the film showed us so far makes Baby an engaging or compelling character. He isn't charismatic, doesn't seem to have any goals, desires or something to achieve, and there's this constant need for the film to force the audience into swallowing this idea that we should give a crap because he's being forced to do things and random characters are aggressive towards him. We should care because he's a black sheep, the lone orphan who everyone despises and uses for their own pleasure. This is something I expect to find in shitty, low-effort anime shows. And to the surprise of no one, The Rising of the Shield Hero, a series currently airing from the moment I'm writing this, does this to the most extreme end, where everyone, or 99% of the characters in that show, hate the protagonist for no reason except to make the audience feel pity for our hero and feel angry towards the villains. It's such a cartoonish and unrealistic trait that finding it inside an Edgar Wright story is disappointing to say the least. It's not hard to find stories where the protagonist's parents are dead, it's a common staple in fantasy, but they usually have something more to offer, and watching this flashback at this point in the movie, it makes Baby look even worse than he already was. Before, he was just an unlikable, whatever protagonist. But now, the film is actually trying to lay the groundwork to make him out to be a hero like Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker, by giving him a similar background. It's pathetic and a little bit laughable. Moving on, you have Baby interacting with love interest for the first time. And look, another Easter egg for the end of the film. So cool. There's a moment right here where Baby loses track of time. Deborah, the love interest, goes to change into her uniform and is apparently very efficient. Either that or she's related to the Flash, but the most likely explanation is that Baby lost track of time. This could imply that Baby is prone in losing tracks of time whenever he's daydreaming, and back in that first scene, he was daydreaming at the exact time his partner spent robbing the bank. This could mean the whole minute wasn't actually a minute, it could have been even longer, or in the film's defense, it could have been less. But my problem with that scene was the way the film presented the situation. To me, it seemed like they got inside the bank at this point, and only around here did they start robbing it. Staying inside for at least 50 seconds, doing who knows what, while wearing masks and dressed like people who are up to something. That's my issue with it. The presentation isn't very good. So now we have Baby talking to Deborah. There are a few things here I'd like to mention, like her acting. Throughout the film, it's not a problem. In some cases, she's even the only one who seems to be making an effort. But here, I would say they should have used another take.
I have all the time in the world. Were you recording this?
Yeah, her reaction looked fake, very unconvincing. She didn't even take a proper look at what was on the table. She just immediately recognized the recorder. There's no time to breathe, to process what she's seeing. As soon as she finished one line of dialogue, she jumped right into the next one. It was way too soon, breaking any immersion that I'm seeing real characters and not actors. And this happens again with this bit.
I'm a driver.
Oh, like a chauffeur.
Although here, they were smart enough to keep the camera on Baby. Now, to contrast with a reaction that seems natural.
Anyone I'd know?
I hope not.
Well, aren't you mysterious?
That was nice, wasn't it? I don't hate every part of this film, just the bits that are crap. Unfortunately, there are a lot of them.
So when was the last time you hit the road just for fun?
This is a line of dialogue that stuck with me, because I don't think there's a single moment throughout the film where Baby drives for fun without being related to the heist. Even though Baby is a character who supposedly loves driving, he never drives when he doesn't have anything else to do. He either stalks his crush or makes music. Great, more music.
So good to me, baby.
Oh, there you are.
Tell me that sudden change in tone didn't come off a little bit cartoonish. The way this film has of presenting drama feels so over the top at times, like when a kid is playing around Windows Movie Maker and they just add whatever effects they feel will sound cooler and give the scene hype. I don't even understand what tone they were aiming for. Back when he picked up that phone, everything got dark and ominous, and 1 second later, it's back to looking cool and hip.
Oh, there you are. I've been calling, baby.
I don't know what I'm supposed to take serious and what's played off for laughs. I guess it doesn't really matter.
Meet your new crew. Over here is Eddie No-Nose, formerly Eddie the Nose.
Hey look! Characters that don't know each other gain to know one another before doing anything illegal and complicated. Amazing!
So Doc, how many jobs done with the kid?
The ghost that baited cops doing 130 on 85. Headlights off, brake lights disconnected.
Wow. I just drew a whole goddamn map in chalk while we've been standing here squawking. That's pretty fucking impressive, right?
No. I'm pretty sure someone else drew that for you. You just spend this entire time explaining to the audience why that kid is being used by you. This is called exposition. It's somewhat masked since he's talking with another character and giving that character new information. But considering how this guy is just some random criminal and how important the background information Kevin just gave is for the film, the conversation itself feels like not so clever exposition. It's just saying stuff the audience needs to know. That's it. Electro does nothing with this information. Afterwards, we have Doc explaining the plan to everyone, and another moment where people hate Baby because the script told them to. I get why people don't like him, after all was there to like, but hate is just bland. Next we have the second on-screen heist, that armored truck I mentioned, and despite being a much better sequence than the first, there are some aspects that could have been improved. This instance where both characters yell no.
Oh, you mean Jason?
No! It would have worked better if we saw both characters in the same frame instead of just Electro. If you go through the trouble of having both scream, then why not having them together in the same shot? It would have enhanced the moment, in my opinion, but that's just a missed opportunity. Immediately after, we get the best piece of evidence that this film takes place in the US. After all, what other country would allow you to customize your weapons? Probably not something unique to the US, but it just feels like an American thing to do. Anyway, although the chase wasn't as ambitious as the first one, it was much better executed. You actually see and comprehend what was happening. Even if this bit seemed cut out of some strange horror sitcom,
Huh, sweetheart? Oh, my love.
the overall chase is better presented. And at least this team used gloves, which is weird, since this team has Electro, and throughout the rest of the film, he'll prove to be nothing more than a liability who couldn't care less about leaving evidences behind. But whatever, they used gloves. I'm happy.
Lots of cunts.
And you're all straight, baby.
That's it?
Sure is. You're all paid up.
And it's finally over. After the heist, Baby has officially paid off his debt to Doc. He just needs to dispose of the body, and then he can finally leave this life behind. And we'll learn more about Baby's parents. His mother was a singer, and his father was some guy. They gave him an iPod one time. That's pretty much it. Terrific information and awesome work on making them stand out. Really interesting background Baby has. Not at all generic or artificial. But this is fine, because now we have the only scene where it feels like the music fits with the tone. To be fair, I also enjoy this song, but I'm not biased towards it. It's not something I care that much for. It was just noticeable since every other song in this playlist is crap. I mean, not for my taste. That's what I mean. Getting back to the romance part of the film.
That kid? He's been coming here since before me. I think maybe his mom used to work here.
It's always nice when random extras pump into existence and give new information to our main characters. Just really rewarding and a sign of great writing. The film turns into La La Land for a few seconds, but what got my attention was this conversation.
Oh, what's your story, baby? You from here?
I've spoken more to you today than I have to anyone all year.
What we have here? Two characters getting to know each other, giving out information in a way that doesn't seem like it's forcing exposition down the audience's throat. Unbelievable!
Hey, that's pretty good!
Despite that scene being one of the best ones so far, I have to admit that the only real reason I enjoy it is because of her smile. She's gorgeous. I still don't have any investment in these characters whatsoever, but I could stare at her smile all day long. They talk, He goes home and gets a new job as a pizza delivering boy, and then they go on their date, where we can again have the pleasure of staring at two exceptionally attractive individuals. That's what storytelling is all about. Eventually it's time to pay for dinner, but it seems Doc has already taken care of that.
I said we were straight, but did you think we were done? That was it?
I got a job, Doc.
Yeah, but why slave away delivering Goodfellas pizzas?
No, Doc.
You know I never do a job with the exact same crew twice, right?
Yes.
I'm of the thinking that you are my lucky charm, and that I'm not doing this job without you.
There isn't the slightest thread of tension coming off this conversation. It's honestly amazing how someone as charismatic and compelling as Kevin Spacey can come off downright boring in this film. The fact that he's talking to a block of wood doesn't help, I'm sure, but in House of Cards he was quite able to give off this tantalizing charm of a complete sociopath. And that was when he was talking to the camera alone. But I guess that's the difference between a well-written character and a poorly written one.
I need to give you the speech about what happens when you say no, how I can break your legs and kill everyone you love.
Yeah, break his legs. It's not like he needs those for anything. Oh wait, he does. Well, thank God this main character doesn't have a bone in his body, and he's pretty simple-minded when it comes to life. I'm sorry, maybe I have been spoiled with strong protagonists like Light from Death Note and Lelouch from Code Geass, and even characters like Jaime and Cersei Lannister from Game of Thrones. I just don't find this nice guy act interesting anymore. It's even worse than Luke Skywalker. He doesn't have any ambition, nothing makes him tick, and everything about him screams, I'm a generic male protagonist with no distinctive, unique character traits whatsoever. Sure, he can drive, but he's no driver, much less a taxi driver. He's just nothing. A walking brick that looks nice. That's it. That's his character. That's Baby.
Not good enough for you.
Different. And I'm here for you when you're ready.
This is painful to watch. You can see that the actress playing Deborah is actually trying to make a good scene. But nope, this brick just won't have it. He looks more bored than I am while watching this film. And that's saying something. Couldn't someone, maybe the director, have asked him to show a little bit of, emotion? I mean, having a pretty face will only get you so far. Look at Lily. She's acting. She's doing something. Why couldn't he have done something as well? Anyway, we move to a scene where Doc asks Baby to check out the place they're going to rob next. And again, for a situation that demands someone who knows how to act, this scene is awkward to watch. The nephew actually helps. His addition breaks some of the awkwardness generated by Ansel Elgort and helps the scene have some levity. But still, watching this guy trying to play the innocent criminal who doesn't normally expose himself by doing recon work and is in an awkward position is awkward by itself. For starters, he still looks fucking monotone. That's one aspect that apparently will never change. But the real issue is that instead of him coming off like someone who's trying to blend in but doesn't really know how to, he comes off like an actor who doesn't know what to do in this scene. He looks uncomfortable, overacts the moment he's supposed to be doing recon work, and just gives the same flat performance for everything else. The only interesting or thing that matters for the film, in terms of theme, is this line of dialogue.
Who doesn't? Everybody wants happiness, nobody wants pain, but you can't have a rainbow without a little rain.
Edgar Wright sure likes a lot of songs, but is this thing trying to imply that what she said is the main theme for the film? Like this is Baby's character arc? He needs to realize that to get what he wants, he might have to do some work first? So it's like that moment in The Wizard of Oz when the Scarecrow realized he had a brain all along. I'm sorry, but how thick and slow do you have to be to only realize this now? Especially in the context of Baby's life. Someone who has been forced into being a criminal since he was very young and presumably had to survive by using some sort of intelligence. This is such a nothing thing to have in your story, especially when the protagonist is this incompetent. Because only by this minute mark does Baby realize Doc had been watching him, when he should have been aware of this since the diner scene. I doubt Baby sent an email to Doc saying he got a new job delivering pizza.
Yeah, but why slave away delivering Goodfellas pizzas?
Those stairs must be a real bitch for Joe, huh? It's my business to know everything.
I hate protagonists like this. They go beyond the mere fact that characters need to have limitations and flaws to purely having limitations. Thank God the guy playing him is a model, because if he wasn't good looking, then how the hell would the audience care for him? There's nothing that makes him likable. He's just there.
You and I are a team. Nothing's more important than our friendship.
He's quoting lines from pop culture. That's so impressive. Just forget the fact that only an idiot would believe him since he's acting is horseshit. What matters is the reference to another film. That's what counts. Let's pause for a second and examine one thing. Why hasn't Baby left this town yet? He has the means, the how, and if he hadn't met that waitress, the only other meaningful person in his life would be his foster father. So why hasn't he left? He didn't know Doc was keeping tracks on him until just now. So what was keeping him from leaving? Was it the diner? His lack of decision making? Being such a piss poor character maybe? When the only real goal in his life, if this can even be considered a goal, is wanting to leave his criminal past behind, all he has to do is drive away, take the people who matter the most to him, and leave. The fact that he doesn't even attempt to do this until it's too late in the plot just further solidifies Baby as one of the worst, most obnoxious protagonists in cinema history. Even Shia LaBeouf from the Transformers movie was more dynamic. The only other protagonists I can think of that are worse are the ones from the Twilight Saga and characters from shady anime like Kirito from Sword Art Online. And this is sad, considering the other protagonists in Edgar Wright's films. If there's one positive takeaway from analyzing and watching Baby Driver so many fucking times, is that I got to rewatch Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, so I could compare Scott and Baby. And I love it. I fucking adore this film now. Which is surprising, because the first time I saw it, I didn't like it whatsoever. I could tell it was well made, much better than this. I just personally didn't enjoy the quirkiness of the direction or the characters. But now, I don't know if it was because I was comparing it to a piece of trash like Baby Driver, I just like it. It's one of those rare moments where a film I previously didn't connect with, I connected with. So at least that's something. Scott is a 22-year-old, innocent, very mature guy. He gets so excited for just being around a girl, who by the way is much younger than he is. He hasn't really grown up, so hasn't got over his past relationship, and when the opportunity arrives, he cheats on his 17-year-old girlfriend, which is terrible, but this helped him realize that he might be a bit of an asshole. He did the same thing his ex did to him, which led to him being how he is now. I love his character arc. This movie is about him growing up, relationships, and love. And I mean real love, not cookie cutter, soap opera bullshit, Baby Driver love. Scott is a pretty awesome character to watch, and I love how this film is about something more than just what type of music Edgar Wright thinks will go well with car chase sequences. Sean is very mature. He doesn't like to leave his comfort zone, which is hanging out with his best friends and his girlfriend in his favorite pub, and when he isn't doing that, he's either at home playing video games like he's still a teenager, or working. And he really helps solidify his adolescent nature by having his colleagues being much younger than he is. I mean, they're also teenagers, some can't even drink legally, and he's a 29-year-old. Talk about Peter Pan syndrome. He can't even handle a child-proof lock. And then there's his relationship with the people in his life. He lets Ed fuck around all day long, never remind him of his responsibilities. He doesn't see his mother that often, and has yet to form a bond with his stepdad, who he has known for 17 years.
He's not my dad, he's my stepdad.
And all this put together versus his girlfriend, the only real adult relationship he has, to dump him. But throughout the film, throughout the zombie apocalypse, Sean learns how to take charge of his life. He's the one who loses his friends and family and tries to keep them alive. He connects with his stepdad, finally accepting him as a father figure. He yells at Ed for being an idiot and holding him back. And he patches things up with Liz. He has a character arc, one that's natural and feels authentic. Nothing comes off staged or fake. It all plays out like it's really happening, even if the film doesn't take itself all that serious. Shaun of the Dead uses zombies and comedy as a vehicle to tell the story of a guy who desperately needed to grow up and start taking responsibility for his life. It helps that the main actor can act, that the other characters are compelling and fun to watch because they have some depth to them, and that the director knew how to construct and present the story in a way that's funny, well made, and wholesome. Shaun of the Dead is pretty much everything Baby Driver isn't, and it even has music that fits with the scenes. Unlike Baby Driver.
Okay, John, it's time at the bar.
Nick is pretty much the opposite of Sean, at least when it comes to career. He excels at being a cop, so much so that he even annoys his colleagues and bosses. And it's awesome that Simon Pegg's performance is realistic and serious. He comes off like someone who's an actual workaholic, and not just some cartoonish version of Sean who happens to be really good at his job. Nick needs to loosen up a bit and create a relationship with someone other than his work. And he does. He eventually makes a friend, and by the end of the film, he befriends even more people. In terms of plot for his character, this is much more about the story and themes than the arc the characters go through. While Shaun of the Dead was much more character-driven, and the story was there for the character's evolution, Hot Fuzz is just an awesome buddy cop story. And Nick is a great protagonist, maybe not one of the best, but certainly better than Baby. And then we have Gary from The World's End. Gary is complicated. Like Sean and Scott, Gary never really grew up and became an adult, but unlike them, who can come off innocent and sweet, Gary is a cunt. Not a very likable guy, but unlike Baby, who I despise for being nothing more than a blank, I don't like Gary because he's actually written as an unlikable character, I understand him, and he certainly becomes less obnoxious as the movie goes along. I just don't find him appealing because of who he is, and not because of his performance or his lack of depth. 1 minute spent with either of these 4 protagonists would be enough to illustrate just how empty and terrible of a character Baby is. It's hard to believe they were all created by the same person. Here's to hoping that Baby is just the exception to the rule, and the next protagonist Edgar Wright comes up with will be more like the other 4. Anyway, let's get back to our story. So Baby phones Deborah. They have what is supposed to be a really lovey-dovey conversation. Deborah asks Baby if he's serious about wanting to live with her, which is understandable. He keeps the same voice tone throughout the entire film, so even if he was making a joke, it would be hard to tell. And then he goes back to meet Doc and the team, where we have this really awful, obnoxious sound, and speaking as someone who can't get into the soundtrack, this is by far the worst piece of music in it.
Holy calamity, scream insanity! All you ever gonna be's another great fan of me!
It's not even music, it's just loud noises. Then we have a really nice interaction between Baby and Betty, and the reason I love this scene is because of John Hamm. This guy is by far the one giving the best performance, and his character, or at least what we see of him, isn't a sensitive asshole or a crazy idiot who goes on rambling for no reason except because a plot needs him to. He comes off like a normal guy and a cool dude to hang out with. He feels authentic and human, and that's something the rest of the film is desperately in needing of. Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings might take place in fantasy universes, but Baby Driver still manages to be more over the top and unbelievable than either of them. And the reason is simple. Whereas both of them have realistic characters, Baby Driver only has one, and it's an atrocity what the film does to him in the third act. This scene is a breath of fresh air, but the subject of the conversation is the very thing that's wrong with the film. Music. Baby Driver is more of a vehicle for Edgar Wright to show off what type of music he likes than an actual film. There's nothing wrong with wanting certain songs to be in your film, but it would help if there was a story and characters attached to them, like in those 2 previous things I mentioned. Anyway, Doc explains them the plan and that there are eyes everywhere, so they have to lay low. It turns out that maybe there is a police force in this city, and since they have to lay low, it's obvious that the next thing Electro does is rob a convenience store, just proving more and more what a capable team member he is. What follows is the film's most pointless action sequence. Not terrible, pointless. The team goes to meet up with Doc's contacts to get new weapons and gear. It turns out they are dirty cops. This at least gives some sort of explanation for why Baby and Doc haven't been arrested yet. The cops are corrupt, and we are left to assume the remaining ones are too incompetent to build a case against people who don't mind leaving evidences behind. The problem I have with this sequence isn't the action itself, it's actually not bad. The editing is good, the plot is great, something rare in Hollywood films, it normally looks like CGI nonsense, and the music is fine. My problem is with the actions and the logic that led up to this moment. First of all, this frame. This is how things escalated, because someone went through the trouble of wiping out the L in LAPD, but left the rest intact because, I don't know, they thought whoever read APD wouldn't figure out the rest. Throughout this video, I wondered about the mental capacity of the police force in this movie, and I was proven right by this scene. They are truly impressive even, incompetent, and they kind of deserve to get shot. Secondly, why didn't Doc tell them in advance that they were meeting up with cops? You'd think he would want to warn them, especially since one of the members in his team gets easily excited about anything really. So why didn't he tell them? I mean, I know why, so we would get this contrived scene that wouldn't exist otherwise, but I mean, why? What am I supposed to make of this scene? Is Doc stupid and incompetent like the cops, or did they have some sort of quota to meet that needed one extra action sequence, and for the price of simple logic and characterization, they added this one? It just feels thrown in for no reason except just to have it. And if they really wanted an action sequence that didn't involve the heist, they could have always showed something with Electro turning on them, or something else that made sense. This feels lazy and contrived, something that isn't surprising given what movie it's in, but still, it's an extra layer of trash that needed to be mentioned. After our characters fuck up, nearly die, and did pretty much the exact opposite of laying low, what do they do next? Do they discuss what just happened and Electro's behavior? No, they start talking about nicknames.
You're crazy, but your real name is not Bats. Yeah, or Buddy? No, they're nicknames. Code names, monikers. So what's your real name, darling?
It's frustrating, it really is. I mean, they just killed a bunch of people when they were supposed to do a weapons deal, and what they decide to discuss right afterwards is if Electro's nickname is his real name. Don't they care about the potential consequences of what just happened? Or are those consequences as irrelevant to the plot as the scene itself was? This movie is something else. It's lacking in character, story, plot, direction, pretty much everything you need to tell a story, but somehow it got critically acclaimed. Why? What did people saw in this? I understand if they were entertained by it, but come on, I'm entertained by Overlord. That doesn't mean I think it's a masterpiece of animation, because it isn't. And this is just...
Dog ain't told me shit. Just an educated guess from an uneducated man. You stack your paper, but you say shit like work hard, play harder, but you play a little too hard. You rack up debt. Maybe with your favorite lap dancer in tow. Maybe you disappear into a world consisting of 3 things: money, sex, drugs, and action.
And the award for most out-of-place scene in any movie goes to Baby Driver. Honestly, they earned it. I don't think they could have beat that previous sequence, but this is truly the work of genius. If there's something this movie needed, it's another pointless, awkward moment where Electro rambles about nonsense. And her acting, the cherry on top of the cake.
Not. And believe me when I tell you, you don't want to see my buddy mad. You have to see nothing but black.
That's bad. I got this.
I won't even bother. Yeah, sure, just kill everyone you interact with tonight. I guess laying low is code to commit as many crimes as you can. That's probably what Doc meant. They return to the building where Doc is waiting for them, and it turns out that Wall Street conversation had some meaning to the plot after all. I mean, this barely counts, but hey, at least they did something with it. And then we have another moment of comedy genius.
I say we all get some sleep. Get ready for this fucking thing.
Have I mentioned how much I love Ansel Elgort's acting? It's great. The film reaches a point where it needs to have conflict again, but this time it makes some sense. Buddy catches Baby trying to sneak away at 2 AM, and Electro manages to get his hands on one of Baby's iPod, which contains a recording. They go to Baby's apartment and get the other tapes, and have this big argument about whether Baby is a cop, should they get another driver, since this one is no good. You know the drill, they simply can't trust Baby at this point. And I'm going to call this scene frustrating. Not because of the tapes, it makes sense them questioning him about them. What doesn't make sense is Doc only now believing that Baby cannot be trusted. Since, you know, he's the one forcing Baby to be here. You'd think he would be aware that when you threaten someone to do something, you shouldn't trust them at all. They are being forced against their will after all. However, the movie had already established that Doc is kind of incompetent, so they can always give that excuse again. This scene is stupid because 1. It ends with Baby giving the performance he gives, and they swallowed it. 2. Baby doesn't even try to defend himself by blaming Electro. You'd think that the liability is the guy who has been committing crimes throughout the entire evening, when they were supposed to be laying low, and not the kid who's being forced to be there. Now, I knew the film wouldn't go this route, because why would it? Why would this film do something clever like that? That would imply that Baby is a smart person, and honestly, that's not him. The scene is frustrating because it relies on the characters being idiots. They all should know, or at least Doc, that you cannot trust Baby. Not because of the tapes, but because of other, more obvious reasons. And why are they okay with Electro doing the job with them? Hasn't he proved by this point that he's a liability? It's frustrating seeing the film blatantly ignoring things like this and focusing on stupid shit. First of all, the tapes have been doctored, so disproving their validity in the court of law shouldn't be that difficult. This is if the tapes are even accepted into evidence. Second of all, why does it matter if Baby tells his girlfriend or stepfather about the heist? Don't you people do the same thing? Doc's nephew, who's gotta be around 10 years old, knows about Doc's criminal life. Who cares if Baby told his girlfriend?
You say you didn't know that bitch.
Why would you say you didn't know her? Have you been talking?
Buddy, did you become stupid or something? Why would Baby tell you the truth about Deborah when the moment that question was asked, there was someone with a gun ready to fire? Isn't it possible that the kid might have been afraid of Electro and scared of what he might do if he told him he knew Deborah? Why isn't anyone talking about Electro? This script is laser focused on nailing Baby to the cross, and it's fucking annoying. Don't know how people enjoyed it. We have reached the final act. I wasn't sure if we were going to make it, but we did. The heist is going down, and guess what's the first thing that happens? Electro dies. Yep, that's how the film kills its most annoying and obnoxious character. No climax, no exciting standoff between two opposing forces, not even a clever way of killing him. Just this, ripping off a death from a Final Destination film. If you think this is stupid, just wait until the film reveals who its final antagonist is. So Bats is dead, and the team needs to run if they don't want to get arrested. And this chase is by far the best in the entire film. The music is upbeat and makes the sequence more enjoyable, and the editing is on point. No complaints here. It's a breath of fresh air compared to everything else. Eventually, Buddy's girlfriend, I think her name is Monica, demonstrates to the audience that she isn't the smartest cookie in the bag and fires against the cops without any consideration towards them firing back at her. And they fire and she dies. Baby manages to escape the cops long enough to say goodbye to his stepfather, and again, this is another moment of light in what is a clusterfuck of nonsense. It actually feels emotional, and I mean real emotion, not cheesy or over the top. It's a nice scene and I'm glad that it's here, because what follows is the worst part of the film. Baby returns to the restaurant so he can pick up Deborah, and guess who's there? It's Buddy, the most human-like character we have in the entire film. He's the final antagonist. The only person in Baby's criminal life that treated him nice and was even in opposition with some of the crazier characters. He's the guy the film decided to have as a final boss. And you know what? I'm rooting for him. He just lost his girlfriend, he's nice, and Baby is a brick. I wish Buddy good luck. Baby needs to skip town with Deborah, but first he needs help. And who does he turn to? Doc.
But I'm standing here asking for your help.
You're asking help from the guy who's been threatening and forcing you to work for him? How stupid can you be? Why is this happening? Who thought this was a good idea? Discounting Electro, Doc is the closest character to being an antagonist, so why would you all of a sudden turn him into the savior who helps our protagonist? It makes no sense. If the film had at least showed us a little bit of Doc's character, maybe him alone thinking of himself as a father figure for Baby. But no, nothing they have showed us would indicate that this would happen. It's actually kind of a twist, or a subversion of your expectations. But a bad one that makes no sense.
There's nothing I can do for you, kid.
Okay, go get your fucking tape.
I'm not gonna help you. Oh, you have a girlfriend? Okay, I'll help. Doc seemed like he took pity on Baby and decided to help because he saw him with a girl? Why would he take pity on someone because they have a girlfriend? This is some weird, bizarre logic Edgar wrote here. If Deborah had her clothes torn and maybe a few wounds, perhaps some blood, in that case it's easy to understand why someone might take pity on them and want to help them. But she looks fine. She looks better than fine. She looks like she's ready to fuck Baby's brains out. This scene is so moronic, contrived, and just plain bullshit. What's happening?
Well, there is some good news. The good news is you like driving.
But does he like driving? He's an incredible driver, but from what we have seen, what he really likes is music. That and stalking Deborah. The only two things the film told us about him and driving is that he's forced to be a getaway driver, and when he was very young, he stole a car that belonged to Doc. We haven't seen clear evidences that he in fact enjoys driving, and if you're writing a character that loves to do something, then maybe you should have that character doing and talking about said thing when they don't have to. Like when the driver from Drive went driving because he wanted to. This film succeeded in showing us a guy who loves music and is great at driving, not someone who loves to drive.
I was in love once.
Yep, that's why he helped him. Because he was in love once. This is normal. We have a few more random action scenes, and didn't this guy die? How the hell did he survive back there? It could be that this is a different guy, I can't see his face very well, but he looks to be that other guy. So how the hell did he survive? And why bring him back to the story? How is this in any way relevant to the plot? I guess you need to fill that action scene quota somehow. John Hamm's character shows up, he fights Baby, and these scenes are cool to watch. They would just be cooler if both characters were interesting. I couldn't care less about what happens to either of them. I like Buddy, but if he dies, it isn't a major loss. He does die, but he almost didn't. You know how John Hamm's character managed to leave the car and sneak up on Baby? It's something of an Easter egg. You see, Buddy is actually in the possession of the One Ring. That's how he managed to sneak up. He was invisible. But he still died. In the end, Baby is caught by the cops and sentenced to 25 years in jail, with parole in 5. It ends with Baby being released and kissing Deborah, and since he doesn't look a day over 25, I'm guessing he was granted that parole. And that's the end. And this shit. I'm giving Baby Driver a 3 out of 10. It's one of the worst films of 2017. Certainly the most overrated one. For the life of me, I cannot comprehend why this, of all films, had the attention it got. A lot of it seemed to be Edgar Wright fanboys pushing for the film, even if it's clearly lacking in things that Edgar is known for, like great characters, a good story, and being actually good. And now there's a sequel on the way. Fuck it can't be much worse than this. Hopefully. Anyway, thanks for watching, hope you liked it, comment down below, leave an upvote for that algorithm, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!
You will see nothing but black.
Get ready for this fucking thing.